Welcome to Power Platform Principles. My name is Daniel Halls. I am the Power Platform Consulting Lead at FSP. My video today for you is on creating collections in a Power App Canvas app and patching to a data source. These are two really useful tools that we can utilize in very different ways when we're setting up our apps. For example, we can collect data up at source when we start the app and search and filter based on that right away. So we can trim down some of that data, we can get around some of the limits that we might have imposed on us in terms of searching and filtering data later on in the application. I also use collections quite a lot when creating rules, lookups, formulas, those sorts of things. For example, we might have an admin user list and we might want to collect that up and then do a lookup against that to see if our current user is in the list. And if they are, that means they're an admin user and they might be able to see extra features within the app itself. So we'll get into that in a moment. I want to say that if you like the video as you're watching, please ensure you give us a like. Any comments, please leave them below. I will answer all of the questions that you have. And who knows, if it's a good question, it might turn into a future video. And of course, if you want to see more of the videos that I'm putting together for you, subscribe to the channel so you get all the latest video updates when I release them. Okay, in getting us started today, I've just simply started a new Canvas app connected to a data source called Patch to Me, which is just a SharePoint list. The SharePoint list has got one record in at the moment, and it's me, 1 the street, 1 2 3 4. We're just looking at these columns: title, name, address, telephone. So really simple list, just to illustrate the point of what we're trying to show you today. So we need to be able to do a few different things. We need to be able to show you how to collect this information and explain what that means. We need to be able to patch data back to that collection that we've created, and we need to patch that collection off to SharePoint. We may also want to patch individual items straight to SharePoint as well. So a few things that we're going to get into today. So first things first, let's do a very simple example. We're going to show you a few things with a gallery on the page. So I'm going to add a gallery and I'm just going to stick a blank vertical gallery on the screen. Now the blank vertical gallery is going to go on the screen and connect just for now to our data source to show you how it looks at the moment. Like so. So that's going to then insert a label. Oh, hang on a moment. Let's insert a label in the actual control. There we go. So we're going to insert a label and we can see we've got our Mr. We're going to insert another label. Daniel Halls appears. I'm going to do absolutely nothing fancy with this app today. We're just going to show you the bare bones. We're going to insert one more label. And there we go. Fairly straightforward. Now this connects straight to our data source. So what this will mean is that if I go to SharePoint and add a new record, and I add Mr. Joe, Joe Blogs, who lives in the road, 1 the road, let's be fancy with this, and has a telephone number of that, and hit save, this will now be an item of data that we can show in here once we just refresh our data source. So we have this refresh, and there's Joe Blogs, and let's just tidy that up so it's underneath there. So that's the traditional way of doing it. Connect to your data source, show the data live, and then we could write all sorts of kind of sorts and filters and things on there from that moment. Where that sort of can fall down a little bit is if we start really creating lots of complicated filters or have quite a lot of data in our SharePoint, the filtering and the sorting can become quite slow. So what we can do instead is we can actually collect this information up. So we might do this when the app starts up. So what we can do is if we select the app from the left hand side and go to the on start rule, we can actually write some functions and formulas in here. So the on start rule for this would be where we're going to create a collection. So I'm going to create the collection and I'm just going to create a data set that is exactly the same as my SharePoint list. I'm not going to do anything with structure. We're going to keep it really simple to begin with. So every time the app starts, we want to do what's called a clear collect. Now, clear collect, you define the collection name. I like to prefix my collections with the word col. Think of it the same as when you prefix with var. Var and the name of the variable. This is col for collection, and then the name of the collection. So I'm just going to do col patch library. It's a list. Let's be specific. List. Yeah, collection of the patch list. And then I'm going to do comma. If you look at the way this is structured, you'll see that we have clear collect, the name of the collection, and what we want to collect. Now, just for the start of this video, we're going to start simple and we're going to build on it as we go through. So the first thing we want to do with this one is we just want to collect up our data source, which I've called patch to me. And if we close that off, that can literally be it. Because we've said create this collection and get all the stuff in patch to me, it will structure it exactly the same. We'll end up with the same structure of data that is in our list. We'll have all the same column names and we'll have all the same information in it. So let's give that a whirl and show you how that works. So if I just click the ellipses next to app, we can actually run the on start rule from Canvas for Power App Studio. So if I press run, nothing will seemingly happen. And behind the scenes, if I go to file, collections, you'll see here's my col patch list. I've now got my 2 records in here. I've got my address, I've got the author, so who created it. I've got all the behind the scenes metadata fields that you get from SharePoint, including things like the name, the one I created, title, telephone, and address will be in there somewhere as well. So all those get created. So it's just literally copied the data structure. So if I go back into my app now, and I said to my gallery, actually, don't use patch to me, use col patch list, what will happen is nothing will really fundamentally change. The collection is exactly the same as the SharePoint list, so everything matches up nicely. All the titles and the names are exactly the same, so these are all read and understood by Power Apps in a really nice and simple way. So that just copies across. What that will mean now, though, is when I sort and filter, it will actually sort and filter far quicker when you've got a massive data set. So instead of saying, and sort and filter is probably one that we need to touch on another day, but if you have to do a whole bunch of filtering, you always run into sort of certain limitations around how many items you can return, what sort of queries are delegable to SharePoint. But basically what happens is Power Apps goes to SharePoint and says, I'm looking for these items, can you provide them for me? And SharePoint will go through its list, sort them all out and send them over to Power Apps. So that will happen, and if it's a large list or a non-delegable query, you get problems, you get performance issues, you get slower returned results, and it can become quite difficult for the end user. Whereas if you've got it in a collection already, the data that you need to have a look through, it will sort and filter really quickly. It was almost instantaneous, where you can just sort of sort, filter, done, because Power Apps has got all the information already. So it's just like running down a list locally within the app itself. So that's one benefit. The other thing that you can do there as well is you can actually run your, when you do your collection, you can actually do a sort and filter on your data at that point. So if you're only going to work with, say, up-to-date records, open records, you can actually, when you run your patch at the beginning, which we'll do in a moment, your collection at the beginning, you can actually do a lookup to find those records. So let's do that now. We're going to update our data source in SharePoint. We're going to add in a column, and it's going to be a choice field. The choice field is just going to be called status, and then we're going to add open, closed, and just get rid of the last one, and that will do us from there. Don't need to do anything else to it. Let's just edit these from here in SharePoint just for speed, and make one open and one closed. Exit grid view. So let's see how that translates into Power Apps. When we go back across to the other screen, we just need to refresh our data source because we've just made a change to the data source itself, and we're working in Power App Studio. Obviously running the app wouldn't necessarily have to refresh it. Every time you load it, you'd get a refresh anyway. So refresh the data source like so, and we're going to go back up and we're going to go and run our onStart property again. Now, because I've set this up just to run as an exact copy of the list, this will automatically add in the additional column that we've had created in SharePoint. So run onStart, and again, it looks like nothing happens. Let's go into our gallery, insert a label, put it on the end, and let's introduce status. And there's status, and it'll be dot value because it's a drop-down choice. And we can now see we've now got our collection running with that. So that's the first bit. But actually what we said we want to do is we want to potentially work with only the open records and forget the closed records for this point. As a way of trimming down the data that we're working with from the beginning. I won't get too much into it, but I will mention delegation for a moment. Delegation is a really important thing to consider in building an app up. If you end up with little orange warning triangles on your galleries or in other locations in your app, it means you've got a delegation issue. If you have a delegation issue, it means this. It means that you can only get access to the first 2,000 items as a maximum. By default, I think it's 500. And why that's important is if you get delegation warning, it means that Power Apps can't ask SharePoint for data in a way SharePoint understands. So Power Apps goes, hey SharePoint, can I have some stuff? And SharePoint goes, you can, but I don't really understand what you're looking for. So what I'll do is I'll get the first 2,000 items off the list and pass them to you, and you can sort out the rest. So the delegation is passed back to Power Apps, and then Power Apps goes through those 2,000 items and filters them this side of the equation. So you end up trimming that 2,000 down. Now, if you had 2,000 or more items in there, you won't get everything across. You'll only get the first 2,000. So that can be problematic if you've got a big data set. So it's worth noting. So that's why we might start introducing things like this. So we can introduce into the item portion of our collection, what items do we want? We can actually introduce a lookup. So what we can say here is we can say lookup in our data source, which is the patch to me, and we can say in there a condition, and the condition we're going to introduce is status dot value is equal. And we can do this in a number of different ways. I'm going to just hard code it for the sake of speed. Is equal to open. Close bracket. Like so. Oh, and I don't need this at the bottom anymore. And close that bracket. There we go. So we close our parentheses off. Now, because we've updated that, let me just tidy that up and talk you through it, and then we'll run it so we can get some data back into our list. Because we've updated it, it stops running so that our gallery's gone empty. So we're saying clear collect is still true, right? We're going to clear collect. So this is the first part of our formula. Then we're going to create a collection called Col Patch List. So that's the collection name. And then in the item, we're introducing a lookup element. So the item is all of this part here. So if I highlight all of that, you can see that this is still the item section. So in the item, we're defining what we're going to go and get and add to our, collection. So it's still following the data structure of patch to me. We're just saying, shorten it down a bit, please. Give us, this stuff that's equal to open. So let's run that and show you what happens to our gallery. So app, run onStart, and there we go. We now only have the open records. So we can start trimming that data source down so we don't have to worry about the massive list of stuff behind the scenes. So really useful. Now let's work on adding data to our collection. We've got it from the data source. What we want to do now is we want to actually create some new records that we can send back to SharePoint later on. So let's insert a label and let's create a really rudimental form. title, and then it was name, typing, and then it was address. Now, if I was doing this properly, I would spend lots of time doing nice design. I'd make it responsive. I would space things out, but we're not going to worry about all of that. Status is next. So I'm just going to put the things on the page. And what I will say is this is going to be slightly painful for me because I like to start lining stuff up. So if I drift off into just making it look pretty, I apologise. For now, let's add in a text input. So that's going to go next to our title. You can see where this is going. It's just going to be a really simple form. We don't need a default value, but we might want some hint text that says, no. Let's just leave it blank. We might want a text input. So we're going to want a couple of these. I will get rid of the default value because that does make it look a little messy. And then we go text input because the address is text input. What we might do here is we might do that, and we might say be multi-line, like so, and then that will do just for the art of tinkering. Get rid of the input and the status. Actually, let's do the status properly. Let's do that as a drop down so we can show you how to use a drop down when you're writing a record back. So again, in here. Now, one of the reasons that some people say, why do you build forms? I often build my forms outside of a form. And the reason I do that is so that we can, open and closed, wasn't it? Like so. One of the reasons I do it is actually this. If you ever try to edit a form to change it to more of a custom colour, and what you find you have to do is you have to go through all the parts in the form and you have to colour in the text, the border colour, the hover colour, the drop-down colour, the chevron colour. And if you've got 50 drop-downs in your form, it can take forever just colouring and colouring and colouring. What I would typically do, and this is a slight sideline, I would create a component, and it would be a component of a drop-down, and then I would build that once, and then I'd place the component on my screens ever I need one. If I need to change the colour, I change it on my component. Once, all of the others update. Top tip of the day for you. Quick way of doing it. If you want a video on components, comment below, let me know, and I will be able to create one in the future. I think responsive design is up next, but following that, components and components libraries is probably a popular one. Okay, so there's my rough rubbish form, right? So we're not going to worry about how it looks and what we're going to do. We're going to want a way of taking the information that we fill in there and putting it into our collection. So let's do that. Let's add a button at the bottom, and we're going to say save. Now we have our form in place. We're going to collect the input of that into our patch collection behind the scenes. So to do this, we're going to, on our save button, add the collect formula. So we did clear collect earlier, and clear collect will enable you to actually remove all the records that are currently in there and then add new ones. We're just going to collect onto the end of those. So let's do that. So we're going to go with our collection name as the source, so collection, and then the item. Now what we're going to do now is slightly different to what we did before, because we were just getting everything from SharePoint, didn't really care. Now we need to structure up our collection so that we can actually send the right form fields to the right column in our collection. So we're going to open up a curly brace. Now I, from habit, close the curly brace and close the parentheses as well. Gives us a nice, neat and tidy way of working. And then we've got our structure. So what we're now doing is we're defining the item. We can actually say that title is going to be, what did I call it? Oh, I didn't rename it. Text input 1.text. Yeah, and then our next thing that we can define, we're going to say that the name is going to be text input 2.text. I should have renamed them. Should have created really nice names for them. Next up, we've got the address. An address is going to be text input 3.text. And then lastly, the status. Status was a drop-down choice. So it's drop-down 1, and it's dot selected. There we go. So what will happen now is this will, when I press the button, take any of the inputs in there and add them into those. Now we probably add some other logic to this, things to reset the text fields when we finish writing them, so on and so forth. But for now, let's just press play. Let's fill in a Mrs. Sarah Smith, who lives in 123 House Lane. Making it up now, as you can tell. Save. Oh look, straight away, there's Mrs. Sarah Smith. And then we can add as many people that we can think of, not many. Tom Thumb, who lives in a red brick house. Save. And so on. And I could also actually now, I could just bash the button loads and add loads of Tom Thumbs. All in our collection, but none of that is in our SharePoint data source. What we need to do now is we need to find a way of sending this stuff to our data source, which is where patch is going to come in. That's everything that I wanted to do today on collections. Now, I did say at the beginning that we would do patching as well, but what I decided to do is be a little bit more detailed around the collection side of things. I felt this was important because if you can fully understand collections, a lot of the syntax and the methodology behind it we're going to take into patching. And then that will give you an understanding of how to structure a patch formula as well. So my next video will be the conclusion of this video. It will be the second part. It will be the patching side of things. And it will literally follow on from what we've just been working on and take you that one step further and patching back to the collection and patching off to a data source. So thank you very much for watching. Please, if you have any comments about Power Apps, put them in the comments below. If you've liked the video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of what I'm producing, then please pop across to the channel and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video coming up. I've been Daniel Halls. This has been Power Platform Principles. Thank you very much.